All right, this is our new unit. It's going to be about the topic of functions. Right, this is our first video about functions. So this is just a really quick introduction to what functions are. All right, so first thing, what's a function? A function is a relationship between a set of inputs and a set of outputs in which each input is related to exactly one output. Okay, so let me say that again. Function is a relationship between a set of inputs and a set of outputs in which each input is related to exactly one output. Okay, now that might seem a little bit confusing, so we're going to break this down a bit. All right, kind of an informal way to say that would be if a function takes in an input and returns an output. Right, and an analogy that kind of helps to make this a little bit easier to understand is you can imagine a function like a box. Okay, so it's a box in which something goes in and then something comes out. Okay, and what goes in, that's called the input, and oftentimes we call that x. Okay, and let's say this is our function f, and what comes out is our output, f of x. Okay, so this right here is what we would use for the output, and we say this as f of x. This is not f times x, it's not f parentheses x, it's f of x. Okay, so again, our function is something that it takes in something, an input, and then it outputs something, right? It returns an output. All right, so let me give you some examples. Okay, all right. So imagine that we have a grade book, right? So here's our grade book, and we've got some student names, some student IDs, and then the grades of these students in the class, right? And I'm going to define functions. All right, so let's say that f is a function that takes in a student ID number and then outputs the student's name. Okay, so that's what f does, right? If you put in the student ID number, it's going to output the student's name. For g is a function that takes in a student ID number and then outputs the student's grade percentage. Okay, so inside the function, you're going to put in the ID number, and then it's going to spit out the grade percentage for that student. Okay, and then h is a function that takes in a student's name and then outputs the student's letter grade. Okay, so if you put in the student's name, then it's going to send out the letter grade. Okay, so it's basically, the function is, again, this idea of this box, it's an application. It does something. If you tell it something to input, then it's going to do something with that input and then spit out the output information. All right, so let's look at some examples. Okay, so let's look at number 1. What is, and we would read this as f of 27. Okay, and what this is saying is that this number here, this is our input. Okay, and we're trying to figure out what is the output going to be when our input is 27. Okay, well, let's remember what f does. F is a function that takes in a student ID number and then outputs the student's name. So our input is this ID number 27. Okay, and then the output needs to be the student's name. So if we put in an ID number of 27, what would happen? Well, let's see. Student ID number 27 matches the student name, Bobby. So the input of 27 is going to produce the output, Bobby. Okay, so f of 27, we would say, is equal to Bobby. Right? You can kind of imagine it like this computer program, right? If you tell the computer the ID number, well, then the computer is going to tell you back that student name. Okay, let's do another one. So 2, what is f of 56? Okay, so again, 56 here, this is our input. So if we tell the function or the computer program 56, right, it's going to output the student name. So if we tell the computer 56 is the student ID number, it should tell us the name of that student. So if we tell the computer 56 for student ID, well, the name it will spit back at us is Ellie. So f of 56 is equal to Ellie. Okay, so this is the way we're going to write this, right? What we're saying here is that when we input 56 into the computer or the function, it's going to spit out Ellie. Okay, let's do another example here. All right, this time we're looking at the function g, right? And remember, g is a function that you put in the student ID number, and then it's going to output the student's grade percentage. Okay, you're going to put in an ID number, and then it's going to output the grade percentage. Okay, so our input in this case is 47. So if we input 47, what's going to come out? It should be the grade percentage for that student. So if we input an ID number of 47, well, this function is going to spit out 54, the grade percentage. So we would write g of 47 is equal to 54%. Okay, so when we input 47 to the computer program, the function, it will spit out the grade percentage for that person, 54%. Okay, I'm going to do one more with you, and then I'm going to have you pause and try to see if you can finish the rest on your own. Okay, so 4 says, what is h of Abby? Okay, let's review. What's the h function? Well, the definition of the h function was it's a function that takes in a student's name and then outputs the student's letter grade. Okay, so we're going to input Abby, and then we're going to output the student's letter grade. Okay, well, let's think about it. If we input Abby, well, Abby has an 86%. Right? And if we go by this chart, 86%, that's a B. So if we input Abby into the h function, we put Abby inside, well, then the computer program would spit out the letter grade, which would be a B. So h of Abby is equal to her grade, B. If we input Abby, the computer program tells us her grade program, or her letter grade, which is B. Okay, I want you to pause and try to figure out 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. 9 is a little tricky, so if you want to wait on that one, you can. Okay, so pause and then go ahead and do those. All right, welcome back. Let's check, see if you got it. So what is 5? What is g of 36? Okay, well, remember, g is a function that takes in a student ID number and then outputs the grade percentage. So if we have an ID number of 36, so g of 36, we should get out that person's grade percentage, which was 92%. So if we input 36 as a student ID number, it's going to give us out the grade percentage, 92%. Same thing for 6. G of 56 should be equal to 96%. Okay, so if we input 56 for student ID, the G function is going to output the grade 96%. So G of 56 is equal to 96%. 7, what is F of 15? F of 15 should be Abby. Because what does F do? It takes in a student ID number and then outputs the student's name. So F of 15 will give us Abby. 8, what is H of Bobby? Remember, H takes in a name and then outputs the letter grade of that student. So H of Bobby should be equal to a C. Because if we put in Bobby, Bobby has a 72%. And if we look at our chart here, 72% is a C. So if we input Bobby into this function, it would tell us he has a C. So H of Bobby equals C. All right, question 9 is a little tricky. All right, it says, for what inputs is H of X equal to A? In other words, what could you input into this function that would give us a grade of A? All right, well, let's think about it. The inputs are names, the outputs are letter grades. So let's think about it. How many students have A's? Well, in this case, 2. Right? Casey and Ellie. Casey and LE. Right? Because if I were to put Casey into the H function, we would get A. And if we were to put Ellie into the function, we would also get A. So those are the two input values that we could get an A out of it.